From alcohol overuse to moderate use, no more shame and blame. Is your own alcohol use on your mind a lot? Since almost everyone who enjoys alcohol has likely had a binge, how do we manage that? How do we know how much is too much? And how do we regain control when we think we've lost it? In this special 12-part series, confidence coach Susan Axelrod interviews alcohol moderation expert Dr. Michelle Perron. This series begins with the question, why are we having this conversation now? And it wraps up with a burning question for you to consider. For your own alcohol use practice, what will your path be? This special series is sponsored by Axelrod Confidence Coaching. Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of this important and special podcast series. As I have indicated, each time we record an episode, I'm listening to it myself, usually more than once, and inevitably I'm sharing it with someone else I know. We have designed a progression for this conversation. So if you happen to be receiving this episode from someone, I invite you to go find the first episodes, listen to them, so we can be on this important and possibly even life-changing journey together. In the last episode, one of the things we discussed that was very interesting to me was identity migration. I wrote in my notes in my own conversation in real time with Michelle, my guest, the mind that created the problem isn't the same one that will move into the new space. Identity migration is who you are, who you were, who you've become, who you are now, and who you will be. In today's episode, we're going to get granular with the basics, talking about tracking drinks, numbers, moods, planning, and really what's the point. So as I have done every episode so far, I want to just say a word about my special guest, Dr. Michelle Perron. Michelle has 17 years of professional experience working at all levels of addiction care, from inpatient, outpatient, extended care, and telehealth to online moderation coaching services. She has supervised therapists and counselors, taught college courses in counseling, and developed workshops and programs. Hi, Michelle. Welcome back to this important conversation.
Hi, Susan. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about what we're going to talk about today. And today was all about practical skills and why we're doing them.
Good. I love practical skills. I love the why. I did just want to take 1 minute. It may come up later, but I did really want to start with this idea of identity migration. Is it accurate to say that it begins with the question, who am I connected to my alcohol use, or who do I want to be migrating forward?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Taking stock of where you are. I always have clients do that, which is why I have these practical skills we're talking about today, because I live up in the north where people hunt. And I align it with the idea, if I were going to take you out in the woods and ask you to go deer hunting, but instead of showing you where you are or letting you see your environment, I'm going to blindfold you and turn you in a circle and say, okay, shoot the target. And of course, there's not going to be any way to do that if you're blindfolded. So you really have to know what the target is. And so identity migration comes in that I really understand what the target is. And then I have to turn back and look at the shooter, so to speak, and say, who do I need to be? I need to be a sharpshooter. I need to know the distance. I need to know, the weapon I'm using. I need to know who exactly I am so I am successful in my hunt, so to speak. So for us, then, it's who am I going to be when I'm able to moderate? If moderation looks like this, and we'll talk about this in the steps, then who am I to embody that? Because if I'm the person that's chasing the high or the buzz, it's not going to be the same person who moderates.
Wow, I just want to sit here for a moment and breathe. Really, Michelle, this stuff is so powerful. In the last episodes, we've been coming up with, remember, we had a challenge that was, what's a good reason to drink, right?
Yes.
Bringing people to mindful awareness for themselves of what's a good reason to drink. And now we're asking ourselves the question, who am I going to be when I'm able to moderate? But if I only have an identity connected to alcohol, the secreting of alcohol, the hiding, the lying, the using on the way to overusing, perhaps, if that has become my identity over some period of time, then that is who I am and how I see myself, which gets into the shame game, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that does nothing for our motivation, but more than outcome and motivation, identity will carry you a lot farther. And that repetitive act and that embodiment of a person in your mind that is able to control their drinking. What does that person think, and what do they eat, and how do they go about their day? And more importantly, how do they manage stress? What would I need to do differently if alcohol is my go-to? I'm obviously going to have to learn some new stress relief, and that comes through the body, that comes through mind practice, that comes through exercise, Qigong, whatever it is that you can do to improve the way that you manage stress. So that won't be the person who reaches for the bottle or the glass.
Wow. This is like, my breath is almost captured at how incredible this idea is. So thank you so much for introducing the concept of identity migration connected to your alcohol use, and for saying these things out loud, bringing them to the forefront of our mind and our experience of, I call it in my soul connection work, who do I want to be and how do I want to be? And you're coming here offering guidance, tools, tips, strategies to help us actually understand that we can migrate into becoming a new person. So let's get into it now. Today, we're going to be talking about how do we make progress. So I'm all ears. I've got my pen and pad at the ready.
Okay, awesome. So the 3 cardinal rules that I use with clients, and 1 or 2 of these might be used with other coaches in the space or other groups in the space with, best-selling authors. I won't say names, but I use 1 or 2 things that really are game changers. And so the first one, I'll just review: tracking drinks, planning drinks, and visualizing. So let's talk first things first. So tracking drinking. Compared to AA, you track the number of days that you are sober. And should you take 1 sip of alcohol, you have to restart the clock. Very demoralizing after 364 days. Or if a big life event happens that's overwhelming and you just go back to what you know that will help, and suddenly you've failed at your abstinence commitment. So instead, what we do is I ask my clients to drink on purpose. Not by accident, not when they feel like it, but on purpose. Plan it ahead of time. We do that by tracking. We track the drinks that we had tonight. We track the drinks we're going to have tomorrow and the next day, and by a weekly chart, I suggest. And then the other thing, to be your own best detective, is your mood as you start drinking. What is my mood? In other words, am I really tired from work? Am I overwhelmed by a problem? Did something terrible that I perceive as terrible happen? What is my reason for drinking? Or am I just PMSing? That's frequently an over drinking occasion. Or am I angry, hungry, lonely, tired? Any of those components. And as you track your drinking weekly, you start to get an idea of what your number 1 triggers are.
So in this context, I just shared with you before we came on a story about a person who hit a big number connected to work, and things out of this person's control changed such that that big number dwindled down. This was such a massive disappointment, such a massive betrayal by the company. I said to you, this could be one of those examples where this regular person is having a glass of wine every night, turning into a glass because of how serious and lasting this negative thing connected to business in this case could go from every night you get home from that job. Now you're having a drink from the stress. Now we more easily go to, well, you're filling up again. So you go from 1 drink a night to 2 drinks a night. And then as you have helped us to understand, people can easily go to a bottle of wine themselves, and there would be a migration there. And your identity is consumed or kind of comes from that failure at work, which wasn't even your own failure.
Yeah.
Does that story apply here?
Absolutely. We are taught a lot of different things in school, but we're not taught life skills in school, unfortunately. And sometimes our parents don't have the life skills that we're going to need as we become adults and live our adult lives. And so I think it's each and every individual's responsibility to discover what works for them and not artificially. And that's what alcohol or drug use is. I once had a man I was working with, and he said it was artificial fake happiness.
Oh.
And I've always agreed with him. It's true. If we try to shorten the grieving, the upset, the furious feelings, if we try to somehow make them much smaller and less important through alcohol, those problems will come back tenfold. Alcohol does not get rid of grief. It does not. It may do it in that moment. It may seem like it, but what it does, it encapsulates the emotion, and then there it sits, and it could sit there for years and years and years until finally on the other end of the thing, it'll just explode and be much worse. I've had people crying over the death of a parent 45 years ago, like it was yesterday, because they've been drinking for 45 years to keep the grief away. And that's true. So learning better skills, better stress, better emotional management is key so that you're not drinking for that reason.
So that's very clear. And I know other people who have had decades of that didn't turn to alcohol, but it was trauma embedded in the body and so on and so forth. So we're really talking about in alcohol moderation, you track drinks. To say you drink on purpose is even like, wow, that's weird. That's weird to hear it in through my ears. But then you said but you're not drinking by accident, you're planning it. It's like opening a bag of chips and not putting some into a bowl and eating the bowl, but instead having the bag of chips and how easy it is to just eat the whole bag.
Yes. Yeah. And when people struggle with drinking, it's because it's become a default, a thoughtless act that just soothes the soul. It soothes whatever ails you today. And when we do that, that default becomes automatic and we're not thinking about it. So therefore, I will drink because I feel a certain way, even if I can't articulate what that feeling is. I just know I need an attitude adjustment, or I need to relax, and this will help. It's almost unspoken, right? But we always drink from a feeling. And what I suggest my clients do, track, plan, and drink on purpose, which means I'm no longer, if I put down for the upcoming week where I would like to drink my allotted number, my goal for the week, where and when and with whom am I going to have those drinks, then I'm able to delay my gratification a day or two when I'm choosing not to drink. But if I don't plan ahead, like specifically with the details ahead of time, I'm more likely to drink from a feeling. And the answer will always be yes, until I feel better, which could today be 1 or 2, tomorrow 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7. And by the weekend, I start at 10 a.m., I clean my house, and by 2 o'clock, I'm passed out on the couch. And now it's dysfunctional. Now it's problematic.
And also, even as you're speaking out this progression, you said, drinking from a feeling, it's more thoughtless, you're drinking by default. And then you said, because it feels soothing and that helps, to address those feelings, AKA not address the feelings.
Yes.
But really, in the end, you don't feel better. It's like you're telling yourself I'll feel better, or some entity is telling you you'll feel better, with the drinks, but you literally don't feel better.
Right. It's temporary. It's so fleeting and so temporary.
It's temporary, and you don't feel better emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Right.
But you sort of tell yourself that you do, or you pretend to yourself that you do, or if you're already consumed, addiction is telling you that you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's easy enough to trick ourselves, because the initial buzz, the initial rush that we get from alcohol does feel very pleasant. It's endorphins and dopamine. You just feel great. And so we get that first buzz. And I tell all my clients, the first little buzz you feel from drinking, your first drink or two, it's never going to be as good as that first buzz, no matter how long you drink the rest of the night, because that's the initial letdown of those neurochemicals that helps you feel wonderful. And after that, you just, from there, you just keep milking the cow, and eventually it runs dry, so to speak. So you're not going to have those neurotransmitter buzz at a, say on a scale of 1 to 10, it's not going to be a 10 for the whole night. You're going to have diminishing returns. The more you drink, the less you're going to have.
Right. You're going to have diminishing returns. The more you drink, the less of that feeling you're going to have.
Yes.
While at the same time, the more you drink, the less in control of any of that you are. You literally become more and more incapacitated.
Yes.
And while you're telling yourself, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pardon me, I'm going to shut my office door.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. So the more you drink equals the less control you have.
Yes. And the longer you drink. So it's diminishing. And so a lot of people who get into the habit of drinking high volume, high frequency are so enamored with that first rush that they chasing the high, they call that, right? Chasing the buzz. It happens with other drugs of abuse as well, not just alcohol, and that's due to tolerance. So your tolerance goes up, the sensation of feeling relaxed and buzzed goes down. And then the body starts to suffer for that.
Well, we get into last time we talked about the role of health in moderation, and we get into the challenge of asking myself, what's a good reason to drink? And when you tune into that in a conscious way, then you can get more into the mode of what I like about what we're saying here is you actually get more into the mode of being in charge.
Yes.
You're, wow, you could really feel this energy of, I wrote down the progression of thinking. That would be working with you as a coach, or, in a program where you're thinking about the drinking, why I'm drinking, what I want to feel, how I want it to go. You're planning what's appropriate, how do I really want to be, what do I really want to, and then you're tracking what I'm going to drink. This is so blatant.
Yes.
It's so blatant. Is it me, or is it just like, who does that? Nobody does that. They just have a drink, and then they have another drink, and then they have, it's only Saturday and I'm only drinking 5 drinks, but that's called binge drinking.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all taught how to start the party. I come from Upper Michigan. You start drinking in high school. That's the norm, right? I don't know if that's still the norm, but it was when I was in high school years ago. And so we all know how to start the party, but I was never, ever taught, even throughout college, never taught how to end the party on a high note. I didn't know when enough was enough, because everyone was over drinking. Everyone was drinking heavily in college. And so you just go with the social norm. And unfortunately, now we have that culture where social norms are heavy drinking.
We're taught how to start the party. And then, as we said last time, we're partying, we're in high school, and some very bad thing happens to us after we got the party started, that very bad thing might happen to us. That could look a few different ways, including the obvious. And then that would lead to now we're drinking again or more to deflect the feeling of whatever that bad thing was that happened to us.
Yes.
Now we come to the next party, we pre-gamed in the car. Then
Yes.
we walked in and then we didn't even tell anyone we were pre-gaming. Now we're continuing because we're working to suppress the bad thing that happened to us. You see the progression that I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's always that way, whether you're drinking to get something or out of fear of losing something you already have. Those are the two underlying motivations to over drinking, and so, or addiction in general. And so as I pursue that, whether it's to cover something up or get something I want, like dance better to get the attention of the right person, or date a person, or get brave enough to flirt with that beautiful woman or that handsome man that smells so good, or whatever, right? Whatever it is to build ourselves up, drinking will interfere with that. And there are many, many people who start drinking, in college, and they get to higher volumes. And then the person that they wanted to meet is not interested in meeting them because they're sloppy or too intoxicated.
Then you do, if it happened that there was a place where there was a no drinking culture in your high school years, and you sort of made it through those years, then it is possible to progress in a healthy healthy, high functioning way through college into the young professional years. But college again, or if you're not in college, you may be working. Mm-hmm. And in that environment, you're young, you're working, you're hanging with other older people who are working. Either one of those tracks might be another place where you start drinking for a reason. You said you drink to get something or not to lose something. One of the reasons in either of those cases, as you said, you might start drinking is to feel more confident.
Yes, absolutely.
To feel, more confident or more, in control of yourself. In an ironic twist, It doesn't take very much before you go from there to there. Yes. Just like you said.
Yeah, that diminishing returns. It shows up sometimes earlier than instead of later, and that the diminishing returns, you don't notice it as much as your tolerance goes up. You just have to keep drinking longer. And you're not going to get that initial first buzz, no matter how long you drink. You get the first one when you've been not drinking for a period of time. And then you have that first beer, that first glass of wine, and it's highly rewarding. And if you don't remember that that's the case, you're going to drink a second, a third, or a fourth. And by the 10th drink, which, yes, that happens, you're still chasing that initial feeling or wanting to continue this level of intoxication that isn't sustainable.
Yeah. In one of our earlier episodes, I believe it was the second one, we talked about the phases of life, which just came up again. When does this start? How does it progress? I drank in high school. Yeah. I drank a lot more in college. And by grace and all that is holy, I did not, after college, continue to overdrink. I didn't drink very much as a young professional. I was serious about my career, and drinking just was not part of my world. I don't know, however that was. Although, as we discussed, that phase is a very common time, you're in your 25 and you're going out after work, you don't have kids, this and that. And so these phases are very important. And you just talked that through again. You can really connect if you're paying attention to what we're talking about here today, if you're listening and writing your own notes and connecting to ultimately the outcome of what we're talking about, where you're tracking your drinking, you're drinking for a reason, and it's a good reason. You're drinking to celebrate, as you say, instead of to obliterate. And so I wanted to point this out, that the phases, happen in the early years. Now, of course, we have people who didn't get into any kind of problem until their later years.
Yes.
And that's when we might get into the mom/wine drinking, where you started with a glass and ended with a bottle,
Yeah.
or you started with once a week and you ended up nightly kind of thing. And this time of life is hard, Michelle. The middle years.
Middle years are hard. There's a lot of transition. A lot is happening when your children are little and dependent on you. And that's your 30s. You're actively, dealing with diapers and teaching people how to walk and use the potty and cooking and cleaning and getting
working
and working and juggling and doing all that. And then as you move into your 40s, your children now become a little more independent. And now you might have a little more money at your disposal, and you may have a bigger social group. I find that frequently. And then we get together for wine tastings or book clubs or vacationing together, or I'm going to reunions with old friends to pick up old habits again, and all of those. When I start to have a little free time that I didn't have for the last 10 or 15 years, that's another place where people start picking up their drinking again.
And at that place, I'm going to call out what is, if you are either married or in partnership, then these are difficult years. They're kind of boring years. They're not as fun as it was when you were in your 20s. You're not empty nested like your later 50s or 60s. It's hard. These are hard years to stay connected to your beloved. If you're at the phase, at that age and stage, and you're not in partnership or you're not married and you wanted to be, that's a whole other thing that we have to face. And that would be another reason where you might find you're going out every night or drinking at home alone. You could really see now where we're talking about, this is called how to make progress. You're tracking your drinks. You said you plan, you track, and I wanted to see if you could walk us through what this actually looks like a little bit, when you have this conversation.
Yeah. So I ask clients to get a little calendar. It can just be a little booklets kind of calendar if you want, or there are trackers, there are apps that do that. There are several online that will track drinking for you because it's a standard in moderation. So what you would do is you would track your drinks daily. All right. And so you'll say maybe 2 today, 4 tomorrow, and maybe Friday night you had 8, or whatever it was when you started, when you stopped. And then I layer that, my mood. How did I feel when I started? That's really important. So at the end of the week, then maybe you'll have a little ritual once a week. If you start on a Wednesday, it'll be every Wednesday, Sunday night, whatever it is. And you'll add up all the drinks for the week. Okay, here's what I had this week. And the second week, you start by intending. So you go and you look at your schedule for the week and see where do you have, like this week is busy with the holidays. So you would, choose which party you're going to go to, or which dinner out, or when you're entertaining, or when you're going to be entertained. And you will plan out your total for the week. All right. And so you start with the week you were at, and say you were drinking on average, you were drinking maybe 2 or 3 drinks a day. So 21, 25, 30 drinks a week, right? That might be your starting point. So this next week, you line up where you want to put that, and you reduce it by 2 drinks. So now you're going to have maybe 20 drinks all week. So where do I want to have those on purpose, and how many? Knowing that for women, no more than 4, and for men, no more than 5 on any day. And now I'm going to selectively choose where I'm going to plan to drink. And then I'm going to make sure that over time I'm going to plan a day off, and then 2 days off that are not together, and then I'm going to put 2 days together. And as I do that, I'm going to quickly have the 2 days off, 3 days off, 4 days off, and that's what we're looking for, 4, 5 days off a week. And so with that comes the reduction. So as you step down, your days off will increase, and then you're going to get to that place of moderation, which for me, the guidelines that I use is to stay in single digits every week.
Okay. So
and I call that the ballpark.
Yeah. So I want to acknowledge your video went frozen a little bit, but we heard you perfectly. So
Okay.
the audio was perfect. That's all that matters because nobody needs to look at us at all. What we want is for them to listen and listen deeply. And even what you just spoke through was a type of a formula, a practice, if you will. And I want to invite people to stop here, rewind, go back and listen to that again with an ear towards understanding this process that Michelle just laid out. And then I'm inviting you, the listeners, to think about that process. Part of what we're talking about here, Michelle, in this entire series is raising your conscious vibration, raising your consciousness into awareness of what I'm doing and pretty much how I want to feel. The title included no more blame or shame. How I want to feel is not shame, ashamed, and how somebody else connected to us, we don't want them blaming. And I don't want to feel blamed, which leads to more shame. And so this part right here that you just spoke out is very, very important as almost a process that you can write out and look at, think through, and either use exactly in your own practice to living in alcohol moderation or tweak in a way that works for you, especially if you're working with a professional in alcohol moderation.
Yes.
I did want to say, Michelle, getting the calendar, tracking the drinks daily, then you said layering in your mood, and then you said at the end of the week, adding up how many you had, etc. I did want to go back for a minute to and then you talked about almost a formula of stepping down, etc., which we've talked about in another episode. I wanted to ask about the layering in the mood piece of this process.
Yeah. So layering in the mood means when I begin drinking, I can use 1 or 2 or 3 words on my calendar that say tired, exhausted, pissed off, excited, whatever it is, so that you can capture what comes up most frequently on a daily basis. So when you meet with someone you're working with me, for instance, I'll say, how did your week go? And as we're figuring out what is the pressure that's causing you to drink every day, that informs me, that gives us a conversation to dig deeper. Many times I'll find childhood trauma behind that. Time of day is often very stressful. There'll be many people choose to drink after 3 or 4. And that also coincides with the time most kids came home from school. So if you were living with an alcoholic or had some duress at home, bullying older siblings or whatever, then that would have been a high stress time for you. And that just has kept up and it's showing itself as an adult. So I wanted to clarify that single digit drinking for the week total, but we're not starting there. It's a gradual stepping down process. And as you get more and more intentional and more self-aware, it goes even faster. And so it's just one step at a time. And that's really why it works so well.
And to clarify further, single digit drinking in a week is inside the markers and guidelines that we've discussed in the other episodes.
Yes.
So this isn't, again, going back to one of your drinks is a 16-ounce glass of alcohol with a little ice in it.
Right.
That would be 3 of your drinks.
Yeah, so we're looking at standard drinks a week.
Yes,
standard drinks. If you tell someone who's drinking 25 drinks a week that you're going to be drinking like 8 or 9 on a typical week, that's too much too fast. And that's the impossible goal. And I don't believe in impossible goals. So I start where people are at and work with them each week in order to figure out how do we get you to the next step and the next and the next until finally, within whatever period you lay out, you are drinking moderately. And that also means for my clients that they drink irregular, which means not every week looks exactly the same. If you're drinking exactly 13 drinks every week, every Friday, that's different than if some Fridays you have 2 and other Fridays you forgot. which happens in moderation. You just forget, or you don't feel like it. You're more tired and you realize, oh, I need to get some sleep instead of drinking a few beers. So those things all come into play as you're working with someone.
So drinking irregularly, irregular.
Yes.
I want to pause again. Drinking irregularly, irregular. This is Michelle Perron's quote. And what that means is not every week looks the same. But I guess I'm wondering or wanting to say that if you're used to drinking a handle a week, then, or let's say, 3 bottles of wine a week, you open one, you have a few, you finish it, another one, etc. 3 bottles of wine, 2.5 glasses, or however many, 5 glasses, I think, in a bottle, that adds up. That's more than standard. And but yet it's only 3 bottles of wine a week. Then what we want to do here in this moment is connect a synapse between breaking the regular.
Yes.
Breaking the regular, well, I didn't hit my 3 bottles this week, or I still had, vodka left in the handle, or you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where visualization, and that's the third step, right? Visualization comes into this. So what you do when you visualize, you sit down, take a few deep breaths, and imagine in your mind your identity having migrated successfully. So that if you have, say, a wedding coming up and you want to be successful and just drink a few drinks rather than, getting drunk and falling down at the reception, what you do is you embody yourself as a person who controls your drinking, and that you're confidently controlling, and it's really not that important. You're having a glass of wine, it tastes really good, it's lovely with the dinner, but that is satisfying, and you have no urge to drink more. How does that feel? That feels like I'm paying more attention to the conversation, the bride and groom, the quality of the food, the wedding cake, if you will, and I'm looking at everyone interacting and the pride of all the people, and how lovely a wedding actually is when you're present at the wedding, as opposed to being intoxicated by 6 p.m. or 5 or whatever. So as you do that, then in your mind, then you become the person that you are, that you want to embody. So you're making it real now rather than in the future. And as you practice that daily, even seeing yourself handling this, it's no big deal. It's fun. It's nice. I use accordingly. I know what moderation is. I'm totally and completely satisfied with a drink or two now and then. This is my new me. And what else? And then you can embellish that with, I've lost so many pounds and I'm making more money, or I've got my new house, all the wonderful things you want. So that visualization is key to walking.
I feel my relationships. I have better relationships.
Yes.
I'm here to say that there's neuroscience behind visualization.
Absolutely.
So my whole life, I received the gift of visualization when I was very young, a very young teenager. I didn't know it then. I didn't know what to call it then. But without a doubt, I 100% know that I received a gift of visualization. It's how I got into the college that I went to, and so on. So there is neuroscience behind this process of visualization. There's neuroscience, improved outcomes, neuroplasticity behind this idea that you would see and think repeatedly, creating new trenches of flow in your mind, body, and experience. This is the person I want to be. I want to be the person who goes to the wedding, who everybody isn't, taking bets on when they're going to fall down on the dance floor, right? I want to be in the moderate use. Is this what you mean by drinking on a mission?
No, this is different. Okay. Drinking on a mission generally comes from people who want to drink to excess. So many people will say, why would I drink 2 drinks? What's the point? And the point is exactly, why drink to intoxication every time? Something is up with that. Like it's a flawed logic, because wine was meant to be enjoyed. And I don't think, and while it does cause intoxication and addiction. I think we have to, as humans, live in that moderate zone with everything: temperature, food, exercise, water, everything. We have to live in that Goldilocks zone. Alcohol is included. We cannot go to excess with really anything in life and expect to be healthy. And so I think that's, if we're drinking on a mission, we're going to excess. And that's not healthy. So we have to drink with purpose, on purpose. I'm on purpose going to have just 2 drinks, and it's not a limit, it's a goal, because I strive to, to self-improve. And so that way we strive for it rather than look at it as a limit. So I'm very careful to never say that with clients. I'm not limiting your drinking. You're choosing your drinking, and you're choosing the goal you want to hit. And I'm here to help guide you as to what that goal should be. I just yesterday had to advise someone to actually drink a little more because they were starting to have withdrawal symptoms. I said, you should probably drink at least 1 more today, and to alleviate some of the symptoms. And by goodness, she did that. And so today she only had 1 drink, which was great. And she's not in withdrawal, and she has to travel. And so, it worked out. But I was very careful to speak with her on a daily basis and ask all the questions to make sure that she was doing the right thing.
So when a client might work with you, they might work on a daily basis in this way.
Yes, especially if they're high volume. Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, this is such good stuff. Today we're really talking about how to make progress. If you are watching or listening to us in this conversation, if you wonder if you're drinking too much, if you know that you've been drinking too much and you feel badly about it, you want to do better, you want to be better, you want to feel better, then this is part of where today's conversation comes in. We're raising our conscious awareness, coming to be more consciously aware, not drinking on a mission to get drunk and feel obliterated, obliterate those feelings, but rather using and choosing alcohol to celebrate and be a part of a healthy and well existence for myself in my body and for everyone who loves me. And so this was a really very important episode because we really got into brass tactics, as it's called. There's a process embedded here. There's a plan that you could choose to listen to, seek out, use. You may fail, but in our world, you fail forward.
Yes, absolutely. That's so important. It's not, oh, I drank too much and therefore I have to start, it's not a start over like the impossible goal method.
Right.
It's like in my group, when people have the occasion where they went overboard, they come in and they tell the group, oh, here's what I did. And everyone's like, hey man, I did it too. That's okay. What did you learn and what would you like to do differently? Like everyone knows that that's not a disaster, no matter how bad it got or how long it went. We're all willing to have the conversation, and people will share their experience of what they did when that happened to them. And everyone in the group has had that experience.
And what's coming up for me is it's addiction telling you failed.
Yes.
And
yes.
You get to get more in charge of yourself and be like, oh, that happened. Let's go. Why did that happen? What was I thinking? What was I feeling? What made me do that? You get to be in this conscious progression that Michelle is teaching us to become more in charge of yourself and make better decisions for you if you want to. Yeah. But don't let addiction impose on you. You're a failure. Why bother? I tried that. It failed. No,
that's why planning is instrumental, because when you plan, you're choosing. Alcohol isn't choosing for you on the daily basis based on feelings. You are actually volitionally saying, I'm doing this on Thursday night, which is way different than getting to Thursday night and saying, let her rip.
Right. And you just said something. I want to invite people to go back and listen to the first episode in the way that Michelle spoke to us about the difference between you and alcohol. You just said, alcohol is choosing. and that alcohol is like personified, and you
Yes.
talked about what alcohol is and the energy of the drink of alcohol, and you told us right in the first episode there's no other drink like alcohol,
Yes.
right? And so that harkened back to that episode for me when you said the difference is in this progression where you fail forward, where you're moving, one step in front of the next to migrate your identity, not I'm a failure, I feel ashamed, and, I'm never going to try again or whatever, but that we're coming into conscious awareness, we're connecting with the soul and
Emerging.
emerging, right, and right, really emerging into a new identity. Oh my gosh. In another, we're going to talk about some of the apps that I was familiar with the Reframe app. My own daughter told me about it. She had heard about it. And I signed on to the Reframe app to explore it with curiosity and see how it went. So another time we're going to get into those as well. So, did you have a story about a specific wedding that you wanted to share?
Yes, yes. I once had a gentleman who was really struggling, and his son and he came 8 weeks before the wedding. And so that was a short, lead up time to changing his drinking patterns significantly. But as we worked together and I taught him these skills we talked about today, I had him bring the itinerary for the wedding to a session with me, and he sent it to me so we could go through it, and I could actually do the visualization with him and place the drinks that he planned on throughout the day. And behind him hung his wife's wedding dress outfit, her for her son's wedding. And I said, "Is that your wife's dress?" She said, "Yes." I said, "It's beautiful. You have to be sure to romance her as well," because they were staying. So we walked through it, and I told him, about where to place the drinks and how much and what options he had. And at the dinner, I helped him visualize, dancing with his wife and telling her she's beautiful, how much he loved her. And then the morning after, to be celebrating, with the couple at the breakfast. It was all at a winery as well in California. So a big challenge for him. So as we did that, he felt he could do this, as we did the whole visualization for the whole wedding. He came back a week later, and of course the group and I were very interested, like, how did the wedding go? And he said, better than expected. He said, I didn't drink nearly as much as I had even planned. My wife was ecstatic. She was so happy and so proud of me. I did the toast, and I didn't make a fool of myself or say anything stupid. I danced. We went to bed at a good hour. We got up the next morning, and everything was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. My wife was so pleased, and he said it couldn't have gone better. In fact, he was so encouraged by that. He said, I know exactly what to do. And after another session or so, he was done with working with me. And I think he had got lifelong skills there because they worked so well. He was really reinforced. And so it was lovely to see.
I mean, for anybody who listened to this, you can call this the Napa wedding story. Yeah. And I feel emotional, Michelle, because this story, I didn't know this in my other life, but now I know that this story that you just talked out, it's like the greatest fear of a mother or a father whose child is getting married, and they know they overuse alcohol and they feel ashamed of it, and they're worried about it, and they're anxious about it and stressed about it. And that would make them drink more, not less, if they don't understand this beautiful process that you called out so blatantly. Well, how do you want to feel, Dad, at your child's wedding? When might you have a drink? When might you, just drink soda water or whatever? And then connecting to the wife's mother of the groom dress and romancing the wife and being the man you want to be to your wife at your son's wedding. I mean, this is so beautiful, but I got emotional because I can feel how many people are out there who might be thinking, I could never do that. I'm going to have to drink. She doesn't understand, that could never work for me. I'm going to have to drink in order to just get through this wedding. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's visualization, like I said, was a week prior to the wedding. So his instruction was to re-visualize this on his own to the up until the wedding, which he did, and he said he did when he recounted it to us. The last detail was he was super close to his son, and his buddies would all get together in the garage and drink together. So these were his drinking buddies at the wedding, in addition to his son getting married, because his son's friends were his friends. He was very
Right.
young in mind. And so it was an additional challenge to not, drink to excess like maybe some of the groomsmen did that night. So
Right.
it was lovely. Yeah.
I mean, as it is, if your son's young friends, much younger than you, the age of your son, become your drinking buddies, that might be a picture that you might want to look at and
Yes.
ask yourself, is this really the way I want to be? It may be, and that would be okay for you. You get to choose if you're in charge. But if instead you're trying to be someone you're not or any other things, then you could ask yourself some clarifying questions, as we say in coaching. And also, just to say again, visualization is a neuroscience. It's not a woo-woo magic.
No.
There's reason to do this.
Athletic people in the Olympics train with visualization, as do athletes frequently do use it. It's highly used in other kinds of training.
Musicians,
so why not as part
musicians visualize
Yes.
The music, their hands on the keys, and so on. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think it's utilized in addiction therapy and treatment. I wasn't prone to using that as much when I was still working, as a regular counselor under licensure, but it certainly is a huge difference in my coaching practice, which is why I moved to coaching, so I would have more tools that worked better.
Amazing. Let's have you share this week's challenge.
All right, so this week's challenge is to track your drinking and then plan ahead. Look at your week on your little calendar and write down on the days what your expected drinking is and see how you do. Write your mood, like you can put 1 or 2 words on that same calendar. It doesn't have to be a big production. And then you can sort of start tracking that way. And then you make a decision the following week, which way you want to go. How did it work out? Where could I improve? What do I want to do? Those 3 things, track, plan, and visualize. Those are my 3 cardinal rules with clients.
Great. And then, of course, write it down. So for 1 week's time, track the drinking that you did in the 7 days prior, and then intentionally look ahead at your next 7 days and look at each day. I call this mapping or plotting.
Yeah,
I do
mapping.
this
I love that.
with every client. I do mapping, not in connection to alcohol use or anything, but in my work, in confidence, helping people feel more confident in life and business, that I do this same work. So then looking ahead in your calendar at the next 7 days, let's say, and looking at what you have planned for, I guess this is what I'm hearing, looking at what you have planned for those 7 days, and then saying, I want to have a drink here, I'll have a drink here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good. Excellent.
Yes.
Well, we are going to be meeting again next week, and I'm already looking forward to it. I'm learning so much for this. I want to thank you for the time and energy and effort and information that you're sharing with us, Michelle. I don't think I know it's game changing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And I hope that the people listening will receive the information that they need to get in order to return and to regain control, because self-esteem comes along with that. So.
Without a doubt. All right, my friend, take good care. I'll see you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.